Communism, socialism. Communism, socialism. Here we go. This episode, we're going to break down what is the difference between communism and socialism, okay? Here we go. Get your markers and your pens and your pads out. We're going to learn. We're going to compare line by line right now in this episode of Tony's Topics. Like, subscribe. What is the difference between communism and socialism? Hey, what are you doing down there? Communism, socialism. Here we go. Are you ready? We're going to break it down line by line. We're going to learn the differences and the similarities, but you're going to be surprised because there's something interesting about these two things. Okay, so now we know, relax, I get it. Communism, socialism, those sons of bitches. I gotta go to bed. I get it. Bad. Understood. Thank you. Okay, now, isms, communism, capitalism, socialism, they're just mindsets. They're philosophies. They're not buildings. They're not structures. They're philosophies, beliefs, governance. Okay, so a lot of people get communism and socialism conflated and confused and make them the same. They're not. Now, I'm a former history teacher, okay? I am a former elected official too, so I know a little something about this. Now, here we go. Communism is when the government controls all production of everything and all services. That's communism, okay? So it doesn't mean you don't have choice. It's just that everything is made by the government, either the federal government, the county government, the state government, the local government. So you want to go to that restaurant? It could be called whatever, but it's a government restaurant. Now, you could have choices. You can have 50 restaurants, 100 different restaurants of all different types, but they're all government owned, government run, government employees, government everything. So you want to buy shirts. You go on to a store to go clothes shopping, right? There's hundreds of things you could buy, hundreds of different shirts, but they're all made by the government. You want to go to a cafe, it's a government cafe. There's plenty of choices. You can buy this car, or this car, different companies, but they're all government. The government controls and makes the cars, the coffee, the sneakers, the cakes, the schools, the universities, the landscaper, anything and everything is made, by the government. That's communism, okay? So there is choice, actually could be a lot of choices, but it's all government run, government made, and not even government backed. It is the government. So now you may have very few choices. Well, you may have a lot of choices. It doesn't really matter. It's just everything is made and provided by the government. That's communism. In and of itself, it's not evil, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions with any ism, by the way. But anyways, that's communism. Now, socialism, communism and socialism kind of overlap a little bit, but they're different. Socialism is not, by definition, the government making everything and taking care of everything. No. Simply put, all socialism is higher taxes. That's all. It's higher taxes, and the government has more social services. That's it. So you have a lot of countries out there that have much higher taxes than, let's just say, America, right? But my friends live in Germany. Now, in Germany, they have a lot more social services. So, for instance, everybody has access to the local town pool. What doesn't matter. Everyone has access to it. You're all equally entitled to that. Everyone has access to, quote unquote, free universities. And this is Germany now. We're not talking about North Korea. We're not talking about China. We're not talking about Russia. We're not talking about Vietnam. So that's a socialistic policy that it's just taxes are higher, but the government doesn't offer services and products. I mean, in Germany, you can buy Porsche, you can buy Audi, you can buy Volkswagen, these are all private companies, but everyone just pays higher taxes and there's more social netting. So that's socialism. Higher taxes and you get more social services, which, you can make the argument it's not a bad thing, but that's socialism. So the government doesn't have its own restaurants and its own automobiles and its own t-shirt companies and no. Socialism is everyone's free to have whatever business you want. You could become a billionaire in socialism. You could become a millionaire in socialism, whatever. And you have freedom to open up whatever, a trillion different cafes, a trillion different owners, whatever. It's higher taxes. And then the government has more social services. So again, in many ways, we kind of have some of that here in America. You have welfare, you have a public elementary school, public high schools. You have fire departments, by the way. That's a socialism service. Back in our country not too long ago, in the 1800s, up to the 1850s, if your house was on fire and you didn't pay the capitalism, if you didn't pay to have your house put out, the fire department wouldn't put out your house fire. You can just die. Now, maybe the fire department would want to put it out of the goodness of their heart, but maybe they wouldn't. It was up to their discretion. So that's why they call it fire companies, because you had to pay the company prior to have a placard on outside of your house to say that you purchased the fire policy from the fire company. That's why we have fire companies. It's a nod to the past. And if you didn't pay the fire company, who knows? Maybe your house just doesn't get put out. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. And so that's capitalism. It's a little extreme, but hey, our country did that, right? And then we had the final common sense of like, duh, maybe we should have socialism in this particular aspect where, again, whether you pay your taxes or not, whether you're a billionaire or a bum, but tax money from the people who pay taxes is going to go to put out all the fires in any building, any structure. Everyone is entitlement. Everyone's entitled to have their house put out. It wasn't always like that in America. So you don't want pure capitalism all the time either, because the fire department analogy, not good. So we have some socialistic policies here in America. Again, fire department, police department, military, public schools, right? Even public health care, you have Medicaid, Medicare. So, but anyways, we have less than a quote unquote socialistic country, whatever that means, like a Germany or even a Canada. So, but you can have private industry and you can have private stuff in a socialistic society. It's just, there's just higher taxes and more social services in socialism. Okay. Even now, in socialism and in communism, believe it or not, you can have democracy. And I'm not saying we should do this, but in communism and socialism, you have either political parties or only a political party, the Communist Party, but within that party, you can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 choices, and you have to vote. Well, what is that called? That's a democracy. Now, you don't like the candidate, vote for another candidate. This is the part where you say, well, what about Vladimir Putin, that son of a bitch? True. You have people who exploit that, and Vladimir Putin is a dictator or a king of sorts. And that's called monarchies. But then again, hey, we love Saudi Arabia. They're our buddies. They're our great allies. And that's a dictatorship of monarchy. No democracy, no socialism, no capitalism. It's just boom, dictator, monarchy. Nobody has any problem with that. Anyways, but you could have democracies in socialism and you can have democracies in communism. It's just the one party. The irony is, though, you have choices to vote for multiple candidates, because don't forget, even Russia or China or North Korea, they have to have local mayors, local governors, local people, local council people. So they will be voted on. Now, maybe not at the top where Kim Jong-un or Vlad, they're the quote unquote kings and they're the dictators. True. But that doesn't mean that it's a panacea all the way through the country where nobody gets to choose any level. No, there is choice and there is a democracy. There's a democracy in those countries, but maybe not for that top spot. So you could have democracy and, you could have democracy and communism. Again, it's the one party. The irony, though, is you have 4 or 5 candidates where maybe in our country we don't have communism, we don't have socialism, we have a capitalistic democracy, and you can choose between 2 candidates, you know what I mean? And you could have all the political parties you want, but let's be honest, it's Democrat, Republican, right? So it's murky, it's very murky. So, I don't know, what if you have a local mayor or a local governor in Russia and they, and they are running for re-election or election, but they legit, in their communist party, you have 7 choices, but they're all communists, but you do get 7 choices. And it's legit, right? For their local governor or mayor in Russia, you have 7 choices. In America, you're going to have 2 choices for governor, but we're not a communist country. So I don't know. It's, it's kind of ironic, but so a lot of labels and smoke and mirrors, but you could have democracy in a communist country. Okay. What else? Let's see. You in a communist country versus socialism. And again, I'm not saying that we should have any of this here, but even us in America, we do have, like I said, I alluded to the socialism thing with the fire departments. And even in America, we have a touch of communism in our country. And you'd be surprised because remember we talked about the government directly provides the goods or the services. Well, if you are a certain military contractor, you only have one customer, the US government. I'm not going to name the companies, but it's very obvious, right? Now, that one company only works for the government only. Even if you're a billionaire, you cannot buy that product from that government military contractor. Hey, should be capitalism. Why can't I buy that, that rocket or that jet? I don't have to have it armed. I want a brand new 2026, Raptor or whatever, right? You can't. So the only customer is the government. Well, what is that? That's by default, that is communism. It's one, you have no choice. No one can buy it. Only the government. The government controls that entity. You tell me. Now, so it's kind of a back end thing. It's not overt, but it's back. So there's a touch of that communism in there where it's like the government controls this company, period. Without the government, this company does not exist. Okay. Now, but again, that's a touch where obviously in Russia Russia, it's Panacea, right? All of the companies. So, but all countries have a little sprinkle or a little overlap when it comes to socialism, communism, capitalism. You have countries, obviously all countries lean a certain way. China leans more socialist and not so much communist, even though they have the communist flags like that. Come on, let's be honest. Everything is made from China, right? Your Apple iPhone, China. Every single car part in America, China. So you can have all these companies that make all this stuff, and it's socialism, very high tax for them in their country because they have a lot of free services, but you can still have private companies. The top is the Communist Party, but you have choices, with the exception of Xi Jinping. He's the dictator, so Kim Jong-un, the dictator. So it's overlap, it's granule, it's shades of gray, even in America. I mean, you have certain senators and certain congressmen that have been in power longer than Vladimir Putin. You tell me, is that a good thing? I don't know. It's kind of murky. Not getting into politics, but I'm just saying capitalism, socialism, communism, America leans more towards capitalism. We lean. It's not, we don't have any social services. Remember, high school, elementary school, taxes, pay for that. But if you don't pay taxes, you still are entitled to that social entity, that social construct. That's socialism, right? The police protect everyone, not, do you have the money? No, they just protect you whether you paid the taxes or not. You are entitled to this social service. So, and the list goes on. And we have that here in America. So, just like they have in Russia, they have police for everybody, school for everybody. And they may have free universities, which, by the way, we're starting to do that too. But anyways, communism, capitalism, socialism, they're not separate. They're kind of intertwined. We lean more capitalistic in America. China, Russia lean more socialist / communist, and look, you may say, oh, well, they can't be, look at that. They're so weak if they're communist or socialist. Really? China's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They have socialism big time and, a lot of layers of communism. Last time I checked, they are probably the world power, if not one of. Do you know what I mean? So, it's interesting. It's not black and white, what works and what doesn't. It works for us. You can make the argument. Some people would say it doesn't. But capitalism, we lean towards. Russia, China lean more towards their socialism and communism. And then you have everything in between. Your Mexico, your Canada, your Italy, your Germany. We talked about Germany. So it's not the same thing when people say socialism and communism. Some overlapping, but they are different. Again, wrapping it up. One is about higher taxes and more social services. You're allowed to have private industry. That's socialism. Communism, no privacy. Everything is government owned and run. Again, they're separate, but they do overlap a little bit. And then capitalism, you have your private businesses. You don't want pure capitalism because remember, when the fire departments in the 1800s were pure capitalism, people were left to die. People were left to, have the house burnt down. Or if the fire department felt so charitable, they may put your house out, maybe not, but then they would have competition from other fire companies, and they would get into fistfights over who's going to put that house out because they could have a potential new customer. You don't want that either. That was pure capitalism. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? It's so, again, every country, every people lean a certain way. Tell me what you think. Put in the comment section below. Communism, socialism. Okay, folks. See ya. Bye.